Hi, it's Miguel. So I'm here with Devlog number 4, and so on this one, I am gonna be pretty much discussing the new hobby shop. So I've stopped using all of the placeholder art there, and I started spending some time actually making, the soldering workstation, the client window where once the item is repaired, you'll be taking the item there to get cash. um, and then kind of made a slightly more detailed bin than just the basic rectangular object that was there with a single color. But this way, everything is better laid out. I made a little tile set for it, reusing one of the wall assets from the dungeon. So I also wanted to go over some tweaks I made in the dungeon to kind of tighten up the controls and the animation and just get a tighter feel overall gameplay wise. And then also some little tweaks here and there that I made that I'll be going over, as well as the game over screen. And I'm gonna be looking over some code snippets with you on the challenge room, which was devlog number 3. And so I'm gonna be going over a bit more detail now on what was in there. So let's get started with the hobby shop. So what you're gonna be seeing now on the hobby shop there is gonna be pretty much everything is gonna look brand new. You see now the windows in the top left corner. You have the bin of items that are being dropped off for repair on the left side now. You have all of the UI now at the bottom, because there's not really anything going on there. So I thought it was, good place to put the UI there. And then as you can see, there's a soldering animation. There is a animation for when you use a computer that I still got to add in. And so, as you can see, when he's when the hero is done soldering, they wipe their brow and a little bit of sweat comes off. I'll probably clean up that animation a bit more, so to really show the little sweat, or I don't know, maybe that's subtle enough. So then I tried to make some imperfections in the floor, so it looks like some crappy concrete flooring, and then just a brick, just brick walls, and that's it. you know the for the soldering workstation, I pretty much just used my own, and I just kind of made that, and mine kind of looks like that. So that's pretty much for the entire hobby shop. There's an animation for when the hero walks, idles, for when you're grabbing an item, or giving an item, like if you're grabbing it from the bin or giving it to the client at the client window. And there's the tile set, everything that you interact with, being the soldering workstation, the client window, the computer, and the bin. All of that has been redone, and that's pretty much the entire hobby shop. Things that are still left, I still have to do the soldering machine itself has to have its own animation, so that when the hero is soldering, the soldering tool, or the wand, if you will, won't be there, and then a little smoke will appear, to kind of simulate that the hero's holding that wand and is actually soldering, creating that smoke that comes from when you add solder to a soldering point. The next thing would be that when you see the messages coming up on the computer, that they can be backed up, so to speak. Like you can have two unread messages, and then you'll read them in the order that they were received. So I have to set that. And then using the blank characters that I've using the blank characters that I've made recently, and posted on Twitter, I'm gonna be adding the different clients, if you will. They're more like really donors. They're really just bringing you items to be repaired, in the hopes that you can repair, resell those items for cash to save the hobby shop. So that's their way of kind of helping out. You've decided to repair any items, any unwanted electronics, and that's how the hobby shop will be saved, right? So these clients should have a face. So I'm gonna be working on that, and that's about it there for the hobby shop. Um, Next is the tightening of all the controls. So for that, I wanted to go ahead and I have to give Sparky some kind of shot rate. The way it was is that you could just press, the fire, any of the fire buttons at will, and it would just fire like, like 10 shots in a row. So I capped that, and so now every about half second you can shoot a shot. So that lets you, in quick succession, you're able to get off 3 shots, fairly spaced out. And for the most part, that will be enough for most enemies, unless the shot you're using is too weak. At which point you got to use a lot more. So I made some changes there. Also, the wasps no longer are. In other words, there used to be one of the 3 shots that Sparky could have would be useless against an enemy in any particular dungeon. In the wasp dungeon, it was the spark shot. So what I did instead is I made the spark shot only take away 1 damage rather than no damage. So then this way, when you start off, I can add more enemies, if I wanted to, and then you can either, you as the player can decide if you want to run from all of those enemies until you get the fire shot. Each dungeon has its own ability to get, and in this case, the fire shot makes it much easier to take care and burn all of those wasps and all those nests out of the way. And so this way, with the spark shot, you can still do some damage, but it really is not enough to get to get around and get through the dungeon. But it is enough to kind of make your way to get the fire shot, and that's exactly what I wanted. Something where like you feel like that tension is there, but not so much that the player is essentially not able to engage in any kind of combat at all. The player can decide if they want to engage in combat despite the weak weapons they have, or if they choose to more stealthily, or just gung-ho wise just run through and try to find the room with the ability that they need to be able to dispose of those enemies. The next thing was the animation for when Sparky gets hurt was kind of lasting too long. So like you would get hit, and then Sparky would just stay in this in the hurt animation, which is essentially just Sparky looking down, flashing between the normal color, their normal color, and red. And so that was kind of ugly, kind of looked really, really choppy. So I cleaned that up, made that a lot shorter, made that animation completely just much shorter. I did the same thing for the enemies animations when they get hurt, and for their death animations, which were kind of taking too long. I just kind of wanted to see everything as it was, having to make sure all of the frames were showing properly. But at this point, now that I know that was happening, it was time to just kind of tighten that up, because it was making the game look slow when you just want to be able to like do and then get that blowing up, and then keep moving through the straight current that's there, maybe grab it so you can replenish yourself and then keep on moving. Kind of sucks when you have to like and you wait. Okay, death animation has completed. Okay, cool. Let me walk up there. Okay, let me get the straight current if I need some help. Like it, it slows it down. That way, that gameplay maintains that nice steady pace. And then lastly, for when Sparky enters a dungeon, as you probably noticed there in the beginning, there's like a flash of some, where the player starts, where Sparky begins in the dungeon. There's like some blue orbs that come together, and then they flash into one big orb, and then Sparky enters. So that's how Sparky enters the circuit dungeon, if you will. Kind of like they're like, I wanted them to kind of look like different like pieces of light, kind of like different photons come in, kind of like together converging on one like big energy source, and then just kind of like boom, there appears Sparky, kind of like that Terminator effect with the lightning, something like that. So the next thing I gotta do is I wanted to do something to where when Sparky enters a room, the enemies of that room spawn. Once they've spawned, they stay spawned until you're way out of distance from that room. So I have that animation that I'm still working on, and that will be what I'm doing next. But now let's talk about the game over screen. So now I finally have a game over screen. I wanted it to look kind of like uh, you're looking at almost like the old MS DOS command. Um, didn't really get that completely going as I wanted. I wanted like an animation, so it kind of pulsed at the end, waiting for some kind of user input there, like a little like flash right there. I wanted the lines that you can read there to be actually to be coming out much slower and not so just kind of like all there at once. But I couldn't get that to work, and that's okay. That's completely okay. And so what I do have working though is the buttons there, so you can choose to either replay the dungeon and then it just starts the dungeon all over again. There is no saving, nor will there be any saving in the dungeons. So the only place you'll be able to save, I haven't added the save system yet, I should say, but the only place you'll be able to save will be in the hobby shop. And so if you decide to save and quit at some point within the hobby shop, within the dungeon, you'll only be able to go back to the hobby shop and save there, and you'll have to redo that dungeon from whatever progress you left it at. These dungeons are not that long. This game on its own is not that long. It's not meant to be that long. It's kind of more like just like an exercise to complete a game, as I mentioned before. So the main goal isn't here to kind of take you on this big winding dungeon where you don't know the path. No, there's only 16 rooms. One of those you can't even go in until you get the boss seal. So really 15 rooms. So there's not a lot to explore, and these rooms are not that big. It's not like you're going upstairs or anything like that. So everything is much more it's just it's a smaller, more condensed, compressed experience, right? So you can either replay the dungeon, you can go back to the dungeon select screen, or you can just quit to the hobby shop, and then from there you can either save, or you can just quit the game altogether, close the application. And so what's next probably will be nicer buttons. Right now I just kind of just to kind of get it out there and get the functionality going. So I definitely gotta make the buttons a little nicer, but for now I'm just about happy with it. I'm still messing around with the button animation there that will go down. But next up will be the title screen as well. So you'll see the title screen here, and for the title screen there's actually not much going on. Like for now I just kind of put the title and a couple different clippets of Sparky, in action, and then you can either choose play and it begins a whole new game from the hobby shop, or you can just press quit and close the application. That's pretty much that. So the next thing that I wanted to talk about was the code overview of how the challenge room worked. So you'll see here my code. This is a minute and 10-second video of the code there. So I'm doing this not really to show you at all. Low key, I'm looking for any and all tips, but it works. I tend to over explain things as a person in general, and you probably notice that in just about anything I record. I over explain things quite a bit. And so I'm pretty sure I also do that when I code. So I'll probably see like some redundant lines that I'll probably find later. But so this is pretty much the entire puzzle code as it begins. And for this, I call it the puzzle manager, and this pretty much manages the entire experience in that challenge room by sensing when the player goes in, if the player has made the selection in the puzzle, and once that puzzle has been completed, if they either solved it, ran out of time, or chose the wrong piece. And so after that, it has two coroutines: the puzzle messages, which is just in the beginning, and then the challenge win happens at the very end of the challenge, be it if you successfully completed the puzzle or if you successfully completed the horde. And so the next bit of code that you're gonna see here is the Horde Manager. And so this one is like 2 minutes long. So this was like a fugly mess that I'm 100% positive could have been done in a much shorter chunks, but this is how it worked. And so what I have here is the public game objects. Then I made a public game object array to dump the 8 different enemies I wanted in each one. I referenced the scripts that I wanted to reference, and then in the start menu, it's just a mess. It's just, you see first wave, second wave, you know, setting each individual, okay, each individual enemy of each wave inactive. And then after that, I set some bools for each of the waves to see if they had begun, or that means it's true. And if false, it means that wave has not begun. And then if each of them has been killed, then it goes by each wave to instantiate each wave. Only if the previous wave has been killed off. And so if it has, it starts the next coroutine for the next wave. And for the next wave until it reaches the final horde. And so in this public void horde on just pretty much means that the Horde Manager script has been called. That's the first time that code will run. And then you'll see all of these waves. These coroutines here are, each wave has an order that those enemies spawn in. So that's kind of me trying to create the same randomness after spectacularly failing to implement some kind of randomized enemy spawn horde. It just didn't work out. And so after that, after you do the horde win, it actually goes at the bottom. You'll see it says puzzle manager script start coroutine challenge win. So that goes back to the puzzle manager to the challenge win to complete the challenge as a whole. And that's how the entire challenge room works. That's how I got it to work out. That's pretty much the end of this devlog. This is probably the longest one, and much longer than I expected it to, running at about 17 and a half minutes. But the next one is gonna have a better title screen. I gotta add some finalized artwork. I'm thinking about it being pretty much the same as the actual cover art, which I have an idea for that. Better art on the buttons for the title screen, and some kind of options menu as well to change between either playing on a keyboard or playing on a gamepad, since this will first be for PC. Then the next thing will be the pause screen. I'll probably put some kind of placeholder pause screen in the meantime, as long as it has some buttons, so that I can also add in the diary system. So the diary system is going to be in order to save the tips that Sparky gets from the various B and C boxes, those orange boxes that you saw there. And so I don't want the player to have to remember all of these or write them down. Instead, when you go to a B and C box and a certain tip, let's say tip 6, pops up, you'll be able to hit pause, go to the diary tab, and under the diary tab, tip number 6 will now show. So let's say there are 15 different ones. You've unlocked 1 out of 15 now. And so that's how I'll make it easy for the player to kind of, be in a puzzle, hit the pause button real quick, check the B and C box for tips, and see if they have a tip in there that can help them solve that particular puzzle. And then the next thing will be the boss. And so I'm excited as hell to be able to do this finally, because this will pretty much end the first dungeon. And then from there I can take that same dungeon formula and kind of do it 5 more times to complete the game. So the thing that I have to do now for the boss is like everything. I haven't done a damn thing. I did on paper put that I wanted a WASP queen who kind of moves in a figure 8, and I didn't know if to kind of move the figure 8 as a standard 8 and then throw it on its side for like an infinity symbol, and kind of have the boss switch between those two movement cycles, and then have different phases based on their energy level. So I'm still kind of thinking with that, but I have to do all of the boss art. So the WASP queen has no boss art, And considering that there's already some pretty big wasps in the dungeon, I want to make this one bigger, meaner, and I'm probably honestly been thinking about going back and making some changes to the enemies to making them look a little bit more influenced by electronics, a bit more mechanized. I guess that's probably a horrible term to use, but a bit more, yeah, but a bit more machine-like. And so I'll probably really do that on the Wasp Queen. I have to do the AI for her. There's got to be a boss room door that doesn't allow you to go through until you have the boss seal. I have to do the art for that. I have to in terms of designing the boss room itself. There's nothing special about the boss room. It's just another room. It's what's in that room. And then once you've completed that boss room, the boss is done with, you'll be able to go into the room behind it or below it in the case of the Wasp dungeon, which is the reward room. And that's when you'll get the reward that you'll need from that dungeon to show that you've completed it and to challenge the final and sixth dungeon. From there, the next thing will be probably some tweaks and some things like that I'll make. So the next devlog probably won't be up for about 2 weeks. I'll probably won't even post anything for Screenshot Saturday, this upcoming Saturday, and probably just stay focused on the boss work and maybe show some previews along the way there. But otherwise, the next devlog will probably come at the end of the month, first week in June. So thank you. Have a good one. I'll see you on Twitter. You can hit me up on at Tertiary Map. Have a good one. Stay safe.